All right, today we're going to dive into the work of a writer who absolutely mastered the art of influence, both on her characters and really on literature itself. The one and only Muriel Spark.
So, picture this. You've got this teacher, totally unorthodox, who completely captivates a small group of her students. I mean, she's shaping their minds, their futures, the whole shebang. But here's the thing. This influence, it's got a dark side. And it forces us to ask some really tough questions about loyalty, about power, and where persuasion stops and, well, manipulation begins. This is the world Muriel Spark pulls us into.
And that central conflict? It comes from her most famous novel. So, let's kick things off with what many people consider her absolute masterpiece, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie.
Okay, so the premise seems pretty simple on the surface. We're in a stuffy, conservative girls' school in Edinburgh in the 1930s, and into this world walks Miss Jean Brodie, a teacher who basically throws the rulebook out the window. She doesn't just stick to the curriculum, she takes a special group of students, her Brodie set, under her wing and teaches them about art, romance, and her own, let's just say, questionable politics. She's literally trying to shape them in her own image.
But trust me, this book is so much more than just a story about school. Spark uses Miss Brodie as a lens to really dig into some huge ideas. You know, that constant push and pull between being your own person and just trying to fit in. She explores that razor-thin line between loyalty and betrayal, and how one person's charm can actually become a really dangerous tool for manipulation. Really, it all comes down to how our identities get shaped, for better or for worse, by the people who influence us most.
This makes you wonder, right? Who was the woman who could dream up such a complicated, powerful character? Let's take a look at the author herself, Muriel Spark, because her life really sheds a light on where all this came from. So she was born in Edinburgh back in 1918, and her upbringing was pretty strict, Scottish Presbyterianism, and you can totally feel that rebellious streak against authority in her writing. She actually got her start as a poet right in the thick of the modernist movement before she ever switched to novels. And then, bam, 1961, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie hits the shelves and launches her into stardom. Her career was so impactful that she was eventually made a dame in 1993, a huge deal.
But here's what's really cool. It wasn't just what she wrote about, it was how she wrote. Spark was a total innovator. She loved to mess with the rules of storytelling.
So, what was her secret sauce? What exactly made her writing feel so different?
Okay, first off, she loved using unreliable narrators. This was a classic move for modernists, a way of saying goodbye to those old-fashioned, all-knowing storytellers. By giving us a story through the eyes of someone who's biased or maybe doesn't have all the facts, it kind of forces you to become a detective, right? You have to question everything and piece together the real truth for yourself.
Next up, she completely played with time. I mean, she just shattered the idea of a straight, linear story. In Miss Jean Brodie, for example, she'll flash forward and tell you a character's fate long before you even understand how they got there. And look, this wasn't just some clever trick. It was her way of digging into memory and consequences, showing how our past, present, and future are all tangled up together.
And finally, let's talk about her tone. Spark was an absolute master of satire and dark humor. I mean, she would tackle these massive, serious themes. We're talking morality, evil, even death, but with this incredibly sharp, witty, and sometimes just absurdly funny style. That combination of deep, profound ideas and a cutting sense of humor, that became her signature.
And this amazing style? Oh, it wasn't a one-hit wonder. Ms. Jean Brodie might be her most famous creation, but Muriel Spark built this entire literary universe filled with these unconventional, totally fascinating stories.
Her range was just incredible. For example, you've got Memento Mori, which is this darkly hilarious novel where a bunch of elderly friends start getting these weird anonymous phone calls with a simple message, "Remember you must die." It's this brilliant, kind of chilling look at mortality. Then you have something totally different, like The Takeover, which is this sharp, biting takedown of capitalism and greed. From death to dollars, her genius was just so versatile.
And you know what? This creativity was there right from the start. Her very first novel, The Comforters, is about a writer who starts hearing her own fictional characters talking to her. How wild is that? Then, in The Ballad of Peckham Rye, this devilish, mysterious guy shows up and just flips an entire London neighborhood upside down. Even way later in her career, with A Far Cry from Kensington, she gave us this witty, insider's peek into the publishing world. She never stopped being brilliantly inventive.
So, when you put all this together, it leads to the big question, right? What is her legacy? Why are we still talking about Muriel Spark today?
Okay, get this. This is a fact that just says everything you need to know. In 2018, more than 50 years after it was first published, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie won the Golden Booker Prize. That's an award for the best book in the entire history of the prize. Think about that. For a book to have that kind of staying power, it's almost unheard of, and it just proves how timeless her work really is.
So, to wrap up her legacy, let's just break it down. She completely blew up our expectations for how a story could be told. She gave us some of the most complex, strong, and unforgettable female characters in all of literature. She dove headfirst into the murky, gray areas of morality, and she did it all with that signature mix of deep ideas and wicked wit, inspiring so many writers who came after her.
You know, this quote just hits the nail on the head. She's a key figure for that exact reason, her ability to blend humor with profound insights. She can make you laugh out loud and then make you seriously question everything, sometimes in the exact same sentence. That's real genius.
And that kind of brings us full circle, back to where we began. Her work honestly feels more relevant now than ever. So I'll just leave you with this to chew on. In our world today, an age that's completely defined by social media and online influencers, what can a character like Jean Brodie still teach us about the power and the danger of influence?